The house was not just property, it was a sanctuary. After years of saving, I finally bought my dream home. A charming, slightly eccentric Spanish-style villa nestled in the rigid, manicured conformity of the Lakeside Estates community. I was Adrian, a software engineer who valued peace and privacy. I knew the Homeowners Association was strict, but I never imagined they would become a weapon aimed directly at my life. The weapon was wielded by Eleanor Vance, the HOA president. Eleanor was a retired corporate lawyer, a woman who treated the community like her personal fiefdom. She ruled with an iron fist, fueled by a relentless desire for control, and a deep-seated belief that my slightly unconventional taste was a blight on her perfect neighborhood.
The conflict started small, a passive-aggressive notice about my drought-resistant landscaping not being green enough, or a fine for leaving my recycling bin out for an extra hour. I paid the fines and complied, trying to stay off her radar, but Eleanor wasn't interested in compliance, she was interested in dominance. The escalation began 6 months after I moved in. I received a formal lesson to times as into compliance. If she was interested in dominance as a sense as in dominance, the escalation began 6 months after I moved in. I received a formal lull and we no digress. Official letter from the HOA board signed, of course, by Eleanor stating that my home's exterior paint color, a deep terracotta that perfectly matched the original 1920s style of the house, was no longer consistent with the community's updated aesthetic standards. I was given 30 days to repaint the entire house to a drab desert sand color, elements of the benefits satisfied in-house, or face escalating fines and a mandatory lien on the property. I pulled out my original closing documents.
The terracotta was explicitly approved by the HOA before I purchased the house. Eleanor had simply changed the rules to target me. I hired a lawyer and fought the fine. The legal battle was draining, time-consuming, and expensive. I won the fine appeal, but the victory was hollow. Eleanor simply pivoted to her ultimate goal. A month later, I received the final devastating document. A notice of mandatory sale. Using a ridiculously archaic clause in the bylaws that allowed the HOA to force the sale of a property deemed to unduly lower surrounding property values, Eleanor and her rubber stamp board were moving to sue me to force me to sell my dream home. Her reasoning? My non-conforming paint color and my uncooperative attitude. The shock was immediate, followed by a profound sense of violation. This wasn't about paint, it was about power.
Eleanor hated me for my independence, and she was using the full legal and financial force of the HOA to break me. I looked at the legal documents that threatened to steal my home, and the fear quickly turned into an icy, focused rage. I'm Adrian. I was a man who believed in code and logic, but I was forced to play a game built on social manipulation and dirty secrets. When the HOA tried to steal my home, I decided to expose the rot at the foundation of their entire operation. Tell me, where in the world are you listening to this story from? I hope your home is safer than mine was. I knew a lawsuit would drag on for years, financially destroying me regardless of the outcome. I had to find a different way to fight. I realized that Eleanor's relentless obsession with the appearance of propriety meant that she was likely hiding massive impropriety beneath the surface.
My revenge had to be surgical, targeting her true source of power, her reputation and the HOA's finances. My planning began with a comprehensive financial audit of the HOA's public records, the only documents I, as a member, had a legal right to access. I didn't look at the small expenses. I focused on the multi-year, high-dollar contracts. I spent 3 weeks poring over ledgers, looking for 2 things: contracts awarded without a bid, and contracts with companies that were suspiciously structured. The micro hook appeared in the records for the community's largest recurring expense: the security contract. The HOA paid an astronomical fee to a company named Vanguard Security Services. The contract was always renewed without competition, and the fees escalated yearly far beyond the rate of inflation. I ran a simple corporate search on Vanguard Security Services.
The company's principal was listed as a D. Vance. The last name was a dead giveaway. I ran a quick background check. Vance was David Vance, Eleanor's estranged younger brother, a man with a shaky business history and 2 recent failed startups. Eleanor was funneling hundreds of thousands of dollars of HOA funds, my dues, my neighbor's dues, into her brother's shell company, grossly overpaying for services to keep her brother financially afloat. This was not just a conflict of interest. It was clear Systematic financial embezzlement. The realization was a punch to the gut. She was trying to force me out over a paint color while she was actively stealing from the community. My original motivation of saving my house was now replaced by a burning imperative for justice. I had found the everyday horror hidden beneath the manicured lawns.
I had the power to end her reign, expose her crime, and secure my home in one devastating move. I just needed the perfect moment to deploy it. The HOA's annual general meeting was scheduled for the following Saturday, a perfect public venue for the explosion. I knew Eleanor would use the meeting to grandstand and possibly even announce the progress of the forced sale lawsuit against me. I decided to let her set the stage for her own destruction. I didn't immediately send the audit to the police. I wanted the humiliation to be public and irreversible. I prepared a meticulously detailed, easily digestible report on Vanguard Security Services, complete with the contract dates, the exorbitant fee structure, and the clear link to David Vance. I kept the physical report sealed in a professional legal envelope. The meeting started with Eleanor at the podium, radiating confidence.
She breezed through the treasurer's report, smiling at the community members she was robbing. Then she turned to the unruly element in the community, me. "As you know," she announced, her voice dripping with self-righteous disdain, "we have encountered a persistent, uncooperative attitude from one of our newer residents. Mr. Rule, not bury the lass in my. Mr. Rightus, Adrian here is now facing a lawsuit to compel the sale of his non-conforming property, an action necessary to protect your collective property values." She waited for the expected applause. I simply stood up, holding the legal envelope. The climax had arrived. "Eleanor," I said calmly, my voice cutting through the small chatter, "before you discuss the lawsuit against my house, perhaps we should discuss the lawsuit you are about to face from the Federal Bureau of Investigation." Her confident smile evaporated. She tried to interrupt, but I held up the envelope.
I have here a detailed audit of the Vanguard Security Services contract, an audit that shows the HOA has overpaid a company owned by your brother, David Vance, by an estimated $400,000 over the last 3 years. This isn't about my terracotta paint. This is about you using the HOA's funds as your personal bank account. This is embezzlement, Eleanor. The resulting chaos was instantaneous and spectacular. Murmurs turned into shouted accusations. People weren't looking at me. They were looking at the massive, inflated numbers on the security contract she had personally signed. Eleanor was frozen at the podium, her mask of composure entirely shattered. Her carefully constructed social authority, her true source of power, was vaporizing in front of her most important audience. I didn't stop.
I walked to the side, distributing copies of the summarized audit to the immediate neighbors and the 2 other board members who were clearly complicit but now panicked. The visual evidence was undeniable. Eleanor abandoned the meeting within minutes, her husband physically pulling her away from the podium as angry neighbors demanded to see the security contracts. I stayed until the very end, answering questions and ensuring every person understood that the forced sale lawsuit against me was merely a distraction from her crime. The poetic justice unfolded over the next 72 hours. The board immediately called an emergency session and voted unanimously to strip Eleanor of her presidency and launch a full independent financial review. The lawsuit against me was dropped immediately, but the personal vengeance was still brewing. I wanted Eleanor to know that the power was entirely in my hands. I held back one crucial piece of evidence from the public report, an email from her to her brother, detailing the precise way they would launder a specific $50,000 payment that was labeled only with a vague reference, the lake dredging fee. I had the power to expose not just the security contract fraud, but the systematic, deeper money laundering. That evening, I sent her a single text message from a new, unregistered number. The message simply said, "I have the lake dredging fee email." Her reply was instantaneous and utterly desperate. The woman who had ruled my life with icy contempt was reduced to a frightened mouse. "Please don't tell anyone about the $50K lake dredge. I'll drop the suit. I'll pay your legal fees. Please, Adrian." My brother.
The message cut off, leaving the implication hanging. She was begging for silence, sacrificing her last shred of dignity to save her brother and herself from the deeper criminal fraud I had discovered. I never responded. I didn't need to. I had the confession, the exposure, and the total, unmitigated destruction of her power. Eleanor was arrested 2 weeks later, After the full external audit confirmed my findings and exposed the extent of the embezzlement, she lost her board seat, her social standing, and eventually her freedom. I stayed in my terracotta house, planting a few more of my perfectly unconventional drought-resistant plants. The HOA, now under new, humbled management, never sent me another fine. The woman who tried to steal my dream home ended up losing her entire life to her own greed.
And that's when I realized sometimes the most effective tool against a bully isn't a bigger fist. It's a meticulously reviewed financial ledger.